So good afternoon, elected members, staff, and anyone who is watching in our community today. I will just open our meeting or re-adjourn our meeting for Monday the 25th of May. Are there any apologies? Great, no apologies. Move to the interest register. As you all well know, that if your interest register needs updated, please make contact with our administrative team and they will ensure that that gets done. So we'll move to item number 4 on our Committee of Council meeting, which is to adopt the minutes. Excuse me, team, I'm just switching between screens here. So I'm happy
to move those, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Soper. Anyone happy to second those? Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Any discussions or questions? Okay, and we'll have our first attempt at hitting our buttons on the participant screens. All those in favour? So at the moment, councillors, I have 9 people, 10, and there's 13 elected members. I have Lindsay Abbott, who has voted, Councillor Scout and Councillor Kett. Councillor Crackett, still waiting on your votes there.
Mine's up top.
As was mine, but we'll try again.
Top.
Are we not using the reaction buttons?
If you go to participants, the email was sent out, go to participants, Councillor Crackett, and you'll see that we have a yes or no option in there.
Did that work?
I now have 11, so I'm waiting on 2 more. I now have 12, I'm waiting on 1 more.
Come on, Peter, you can do it.
I've done it.
Councillor Kett, I don't see your vote recorded.
I was probably one of the first to press it. I found the box that says tick and yes, green box, and I've pressed that. I've done it again. Is it there?
It is now. Thank you, Councillor Kett. We have 13 yeses, so that motion we will pass. Thank you. And then I'll move back, obviously, to the next item of our agenda, parking exemptions policy, and Alex is here to speak to that, so I'll pass it over to you. Thank you.
Hi everyone. The report, obviously I'll take it as being received, and it's been to the regulatory committee, and then it's come forward to you guys to have the final vote on it.
Muted, Madam Chair.
Councillor Biddle, you're muted.
Sorry, that was my fault. My sincere apologies. We have done a bit of work on this, councillors, as you know, and so I will ask if there's any questions around this. And I think I have one from Councillor Arnold. Councillor Pottinger.
Okay, I'll just mention, I see option A has been selected, which is pretty much the status quo except for the Bluff Community Board. My preferred option is probably option B, to be fair, with no ongoing exemptions after you leave council. And but I prefer to have one card, if you like, that you could actually move between vehicles, because some of us have more than one vehicle that we use on a regular basis, as opposed to getting 2. The two options are quite close, but my preferred option, if I had to choose between the two, would be option B. Thank you.
Councillor Pottinger.
Thank you, Tony. Yeah, I'm also in agreement with option B. Looking at this from just a rational point of view, I really can't understand why we would persist with option A. I can't see any good reason for that. The idea of a laminated card that could be transferred from vehicle makes a lot of sense. And just having that one, so whatever vehicle you jump in, you grab that with your council medallion thing and you're away. And you do it that way. The only thing I would like to add would be that we have a lot of joint committees with other councils, especially with Gore. And I know that councillors go to Gore and have to try and find parks around their council chamber and vice versa. They probably come to Invercargill more. So I would like to look at the possibility of maybe some redemption cards that could be shared that way. And then we would get over that problem. I think that could be done via the CE maybe, but I would actually move now for option B if I have a seconder for that.
Thank you, Councillor Pottinger. Do I have a seconder that now that you've put that?
I'll second that if you like.
Okay, I've got Councillor Clark waving his hand. So to speak, Councillor Clark, Crackett, Lewis and Kett. And I'll take that motion being moved by Councillor Pottinger and seconded by Councillor Clark.
No, I just had a side issue. We've all probably received an email from Rodney Tribe, and he raised an interesting issue which I'm not privy to, so some of the longer serving councils may be. Does the parking exemption in any way affect our remuneration authority ceiling or cap? So is that a sort of a benefit that we get that should be recognised by the authority, or is that separate to that? And the second thing is I just wanted to reinforce what the others have said. I'm in favour of option B as well.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Claire, if I can just get some clarification for Councillor Clark's question before I move to Councillor Crackett, Lewis and then Councillor Kett.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I know this is an issue that Mr Foster looked at earlier in the year when this paper first came up. I believe that the amount that we are considering doesn't really meet a threshold of concern for the Remuneration Authority. I'll leave it there unless he signals to me that he had heard otherwise. And I think you can see that, no, my advice to you is correct.
Thank you, thank you, Claire. Councillor Crackett, Councillor Lewis and then Councillor Kett in that order.
Thank you, Chair. I would agree with moving forward with option B and also with the addition of the exemptions for GDC and SDC, because like Councillor Pottinger had said, I mean, I've experienced it with WasteNet in particular. We do have a lot of people popping in and out for council business. I think it's also important to note, because Councillor Arnold and Councillor Pottinger had both mentioned about a potential laminated card or whatever that just bounces between whichever vehicles you use, that we're actually quite behind compared to the rest of the country in terms of how we actually meter our parking and our parking establishments and parking buildings, and also just generally street parking. We've got the old lollipops, which literally are found not very many places in the country these days. So at some point, we should be considering to move to number plate recognition technology, and at that point we would register our vehicles and it would be done by, this is the vehicle you own, rather than having to faff around with a laminated card. So I'm sure that that's on our horizons. I know we've talked about it a couple of times, but I think it would be worth noting or asking for a report on when, or at least an update of when we can expect to consider what we're doing with our streetscape infrastructure, street parking and parking buildings.
Thank you, Councillor Crackett. Councillor Lewis?
Thank you, Councillor Biddle. I'd be quite happy to go to option B, and I think it's probably the most political
correct one to do in these days of hardship. If we'd gone to A, I may well have abstained, getting close to the age where I would have got a free one anyway at our end. But certainly, I'm quite happy with option B. Thanks. And it would be easy enough to display. Sorry, Tony. Easy enough to display one card. The senior citizens do it, or the disabilities have a card, and which can be altered from car to car. If you are going out with a disability person, in your own car, you can take their car and park it or put it on your windscreen or whatever. So it's there for all inspectors to see. Easy enough done. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. Councillor Kett.
Yeah, thank you. I said at one of the workshops, possibly in November, that the two-card system has worked well in the past. I made comment about the removable dashboard, like the total mobility. You could remove one to the other car. I have heard up country where they've had it, and kids have been using their parents' counsellors' cards by just whipping it out of dad's car or mum's car and using it. So to keep everyone honest, I think you should have one for each car if you've got two cars, and have the registration on both of them. And it does work, and why change? So I'll be going for the status quo.
Thank you, Councillor Kett. My question, sorry, is to either Ellie or maybe Mr. Foster, now that he's here, and welcome, Mr. Foster, is just how much money, obviously, it costs for the councillors, elected members, to have the parking exemption in the city for elected members. What does that cost like for council business?
I think it's probably best if Ellie answers this. We've got the numbers, Ellie?
Sorry, no, I don't have what the cost would be at hand, and it would be harder to tell because it is a cash flow. The meters are cash and not electronic devices, I suppose.
I was just wondering if there was an appetite from the councillors not to have the parking exemption at all.
Madam Chair, if I could just add to Ellie's comment.
Thanks, Darren.
Just remembering that the exemption is applied only when on official council business, so you would expect the numbers to be relatively low.
Thank you for that. So I've asked my question, I'm satisfied. I'll just go back to the options and the recommendations on the table. We have a mover for option B and a seconder for option B. Option B is clear in the report. The Mayor and councillors to be allocated one parking exemption, which would provide free parking at any council provided car park, provided that the vehicle is parked legally, of course. It continues on with the Bluff Community Board, and also that we would not be eligible for a parking exemption when we leave office. The report is here. We've got a mover and seconder, so I'll put that motion. All those in favour, if you just want to please tick yes. Okay, I have 10 votes for yes, so I'm going to clear all and ask those against to vote. Councillors, I've got 2 against. Could you just raise your hand so I can see who that is, because I think we're missing a vote. Councillors, I get the feeling that this isn't working. It's very confusing. I've got people pushing buttons, putting up their hands. So I'm gonna clear that.
Tony?
What's that? Sorry, Councillor Arnold.
Haven't you got a clear majority? Yeah.
Yes, we have, but it doesn't help if we called for division. I can't see who's voting or doing what, sadly. So I'm just going to clear, we have a majority and that motion obviously would pass, but I just don't think that this is actually working. As a chair, I'm struggling to see everybody and it's taking a lot longer. So I'm going to go back to that hand up for now, just so we can get through this and we'll go from there. Sorry, staff, I know there's been a lot of effort put into this, just it's not working.
Yeah, sorry, Tony, I crashed. My computer crashed.
Okay, thank you. So, Councillor Abbott, can you clarify, did you vote on that motion? That would make sense.
I would vote for option B.
Thank you. Okay, our 13th vote, and I will just change the.
Yeah, thank you.
I can see this just as going round and round in circles. From the elected members through the workshops, the preferred option then was A, and now everyone's taken an about turn. It's been going round and round in circles since last July. We're getting bloody nowhere.
Councillor Kett, I think that's really disrespectful, popping in like that. We have read the report. Your colleagues have read through the same information. We've taken a vote today. The vote was for option B, for 1 pass per elected members, not 2. It's not going around in circles at all. This is the democracy, and unfortunately your motion has fell short, or you've lost that. So respectfully, I'd like to move on from that. So the next item on the agenda, with that motion being passed, is to move to the proposed name change in relation to the subdivision of 162 Patterson.
Madam Chair, if you're comfortable, I'm happy to speak to this report.
Thanks, Darren.
Oh, sorry, Siri's just stolen it from me. 1 second. Thank you, elected members. This report relates to the proposed name change, a small subdivision that went to the regulatory committee. The original subdivision was consented in 2009, but was never undertaken by the then developer. A new developer is now wanting to realise the subdivision and has put forward a name change. I take the report as being read and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Darren. Questions from Councillor Soper? Councillor Ludlow.
Sorry, Madam Chair, it wasn't a question. I was going to move. I thought there were no other questions, so I was going to move.
And I was going to second, Madam Chair.
Oh, that's fantastic. Very efficient. So with all that moved and second, the motion's on the floor. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please just raise your right hand. Against? Motion carried. Thank you. Moving to item number 7 on our agenda today, which is the possible governance structure. I take it that everyone has read the report. I would like to let you know that it has been brought to my attention by the CE that we need some technical issues covered around this particular report. A council of committee or a committee of council does not have any mandate to change committees, and this must be done at a full council level, where His Worship would chair, and we would go through the same process, obviously, with the report. So if everyone is happy, we can call an extraordinary meeting this Thursday, so that as a full council, in a council meeting at the Civic, we are able to look at this particular report.
Happy to move that way, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Soper. Anyone happy to second that? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Thanks, Mr. Lewis. Sorry, I did see Mr. Lewis. Is there any questions or discussion around that?
Only the timing in the day. We have the ELT meeting at 11 o'clock. Later than that would suit me better because I have a eye specialist appointment around about that time also.
Thank you. I'm just going to ask the CE, can we get a clear...
Madam Chair, Council usually meets at 3 p.m. I would suggest to you that 3 p.m. would be an appropriate time.
Okay, 3 p.m. on Thursday.
In the Civic Theatre, so that there is plenty of room for distancing for those who wish to attend in person. If anybody wishes to join by Zoom, we can provide that via large screen.
Thank you very much. No other discussion or questions around that? So I'll move the motion that we have an extraordinary meeting on Thursday at 3 o'clock to discuss this particular report. That way we are following, obviously, the right rules around any governance change, if there should be a governance change, etc., etc. And that will be done on Thursday in a full council meeting. All those in favour, just give me a wave. Thank you. Against? Carried. Thank you. And the last report on the agenda today is the next steps for the Southland Museum and Art Gallery, and Claire will speak to that report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, the council there's a number of steps set out in that report and the past history in relation to it. I think what is front of mind is that the SMAG Trust Board has endorsed the proposal to transfer governance of the museum to Invercargill City, as have Southland District and Gore District. Originally, you were given advice that it was unlikely that you needed to consult with the community, but you were planning to consult on an annual plan. And so the suggestion at that stage was, why not put it in the annual plan, as we know from previous experience that the museum is dear to the heart of many in the public. You chose for very good reason not to consult on an annual plan and asked, what does that mean for the museum? I'm putting that question back to you in the sense of giving you some options that you could either determine that further consultation is necessary based on the sort of feedback that you've had from the communities that you work within, or you might say that limited engagement with friends of the museum who have been vocal about their views on the museum in the past, and engagement with iwi would be appropriate, and that you receive that feedback before you make a final decision. Or you might decide that no further consultation or engagement is necessary. That step is a step that you need to determine the answer to before I think it is reasonable to indicate that you've made a decision and you're going to then ask your partner local authorities to request their trustees, their representatives, to work with the SMAG Trust Board to modify the SMAG Trust Deed to introduce a skills-based board to be entrusted with the guardianship and ownership of the collection. I think you should also ask that iwi be recognised as partners in that modified trust deed. And I noted when going through the historic resolutions that, or the resolutions from last year, that there was a resolution from September last year proposing the disestablishment of the SMAG Trust, and as these things have moved on, it would be appropriate to revoke that resolution. So there it is in front of you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions, councillors? Councillor Arnold?
In my view, I'm sort of thinking that we probably don't need to go out to consultation. All the interest I ever hear about is just when the museum's going to open or close, not actually the governance. So I think, to be honest, as much as people want to know about it, I think they already know about it. So I'd be quite happy to move this forward without going back up to public consultation.
Councillor Clark?
Yep, I fully support that as well. I think that the community are wanting to get some traction on where the museum's going and what that's going to look forward to. The governance issue is really a secondary issue, and I agree with Alan. The way forward is to do no further consultation. But as Claire quite rightly says, once we get to the stage of setting up a new trustee, that's when you bring in some strategic partners around iwi and others.
Thank you, Councillor Clark, Councillor Soper, Councillor Pottinger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say I'm quite happy that we don't need to go to consultation. Even the suggestion of the limited consultation, it's my understanding iwi have been consulted and friends of the museum are already represented on the trust board, as is iwi. So I feel the limited consultation is already unnecessary because they have had their input. And I would just like to comment that in the introduction of a skills-based board, I would see the skills of an iwi rep as being absolutely relevant to a skills-based board. We would want someone on a skills-based board who has particular expertise in the care of tonga. And I believe that iwi rep, while I agree with the request of recognising the partnership, I also believe that it would be essential on a skills-based board to have a reserved slot for someone with expertise in that particular area.
Thank you, Councillor Soper. I can tell you that the Southern Museum Trust Board is looking at how they see the skills-based board being made up for the collection. So I'm just referring to the collection, and that we have absolutely made it clear that it's just a standard that iwi would be participating in every one of those discussions, as I would expect that to be done at a council level also. And I think because they are represented, we had previously made it clear, if this helps, that the advisory committee, that is an advisory board, iwi advisory board to SMAG, would stay with the new board or the new makeup. So that absolutely clarifies that iwi is a partner, which is critical, especially when you're referring to our collection. I come from a place of frustration after having the Southern Museum Trust Board make it very clear what they felt should happen, and we've waited so long for this decision to be made. And I think, like many people, just want to get on with it and get it done. So I absolutely support the move to not consult on the governance, but very, very strongly recommend there is some consultation done around the collection. I think that's going to be the next hurdle that that board would have to face. Councillor Ludlow and Pottinger. No?
No, I'm fine, thanks, Chair.
Councillor Pottinger.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. Absolutely move forward with the skills-based board. I think it is our call, and it expedites this whole process. And the critical thing is, with a skills-based board, hopefully they are entrusted to make calls on the collection. Because if we're going forward to a storage facility, I believe there's a lot of stuff in that collection that perhaps we do not need, and it's evolved over years. So, you know, I welcome this skills-based board to actually look at the collection. We may need new stuff, but to look at the current stuff we have. I may be interpreting their role wrong, but I imagine the board would engage suitable people to do that.
Thank you, Councillor Pottinger, and I can add to that from this, as the SMAG chair, that we've also made a recommendation that no elected members be on that board either, that it is very much skill-based and not politically driven, and I think that's the best decision to move forward for the sake of the collection. Councillor Bex.
Thanks, Tony. Yeah, I'm happy to go forward with without consultation on this one. I think we have done a lot of consultation around museum issues already. And I think that with this being really just solidifying the fact that the council is going to manage the museum, which it actually or essentially already does. It doesn't really seem like that much of a change. The question I have is in the next recommendation that says the council work with its local partner authorities. I just wondered whether we could add into that local authorities and the Southland Regional Heritage Committee. And I realise that they are the same thing essentially, because the Regional Heritage Committee is made up of representatives from the local authorities. But the Regional Heritage Committee is the committee that receives the Heritage Fund and distributes the money to SMAG on behalf of that fund. And so I think it's important that they're part of the conversation. And Councillor Lewis was with me at a meeting with them on Friday, and it was really clear that there's a bit of uncertainty in terms of the Regional Heritage Committee about where their role is and how they can get in and be part of the conversation. So I think it would be great if we could initiate that and include them in that conversation.
Thank you, Bex and Councillor Soper.
Thanks, Madam Chair. If there was no one else to speak, I was going to say I'm happy to move the recommendations with the addition of the words just suggested in the appropriate recommendation. I think it is important to have the Southland Regional Heritage Committee mentioned.
Thank you, Councillor. So if I clarify, the recommendations are that the report Next Steps SMAG be received and the council note and thank SMAG Trust Board for their endorsement of the proposal to transfer governance and management of the activity of the museum for Invercargill to a core department of Invercargill City Council, and that council determines further consultation is not necessary, obviously. That council work with its partner local authorities and request the SMAG Trust Board to modify the SMAG Trust Deed. So is it here that you would like that addition put forward?
Yes.
After local authorities.
Yes, and the Southland Regional Heritage Committee. Local authorities and the Southland Regional Heritage Committee.
Okay, so are we, I'm looking for Michelle, I think, taking minutes. Have we got that amendment in there, Michelle? She's nodding her head. Great, and obviously that council request iwi are recognised as partners. I'd like to move that we take the request out. Iwi are partners anyway, so council recognise iwi as our partners.
Madam Chair, can I explain that the trust deed is not your deed to alter, and so you need to request the SMAG trustees to recognise that. That's why the request is there.
That makes sense. Thank you, Claire. And the council revoked the resolution from 24 September 2019 relating to the disestablishment of the SMAG Trust. So that's been moved. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Munsden. Just a question, Claire, before we go out. What happens now? After we've moved this resolution in relation to the museum, council takes back the activity. We've also got a development that we need to look at. I'm wondering if we can actually put a wee bit more into this particular report and add some recommendations around getting a project team together for the redevelopment of the museum and just getting a wee bit more momentum around this. Are you able to?
Unfortunately, Madam Chair, there is nothing in the report relating to redevelopment. So effectively, you have nothing to base any decisions on. You could ask for a further report setting out the steps for redevelopment, specifically in relation to the question about what happens next is that I will communicate with Gore and Southland and ask that they talk with their trustees, their council or trustees, and that we meet with the SMAG Trust Board to get that moving for the change to be modified. And I will also ask, and it's not in the recommendations, but I will also ask for to negotiate a transfer date with the SMAG Trust.
Okay, I would like to add a recommendation if the mover and seconder would commit to that, to have another report brought back to council to determine the next steps forward around the redevelopment of SMAG. Do I have a
Yes.
seconder? Or sorry, the mover and seconder happy to do that?
Yes.
That's great. Councillor Crackett, did you have a question?
No, I was just seconding it if you were going to put it as a supplementary.
Okay, thank you.
Never
So
mind.
can you add that motion to the recommendations, please, Michelle? I've got a nod there. So with all of those recommendations now on the table, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, say aye, or against? Great, thanks councillors, that motion's carried. And that is the end of our meeting this afternoon. I'm happy to move into public excluded if I have a seconder for that. Hannah's just giving me a wee hands up, so I'm just going to check out if she wants us to do something.
I'm just letting you know that we are currently live streaming, so if I'll let you move into public excluded, I'm just signalling to you that I will need you to wait for a little bit once that occurs.
Oh, no worries. Thanks, Hannah. Thank you, everybody who's attending the meeting today via live stream. Thank you, staff and elected members. I'm happy to move. We move into public excluded. I have a seconder. All those in favour? All those against? Thank you, councillors.